Some parts in Robtop levels are exceptionally bad due to being really annoying or boring to play or quite lazily put together. These are the 10 worst parts in official levels. At number 10 is Theory of Everything 2's first ship part, where Robtop made, in my opinion, a pretty bad decision to build the gameplay out of these disappearing blocks and spikes. This section probably isn't meant to be that hard, but it's fast gameplay with enough up and down movement that the lines between obstacles and safety are blurred, causing players to die here more often than they really should given the ease of surrounding areas. Despite it also making use of the invisible blocks, I don't have the same problem with Toe 2's second ship, as for some reason I always found it pretty straightforward as far as knowing where you're supposed to fly. The first ship never got consistent even though it's much easier skill-wise. Next up is the dark part in Geometrical Dominator. This is one of those parts that a lot of people defend, and I'm sure there are a few others which they'll feel the same way about. If you disagree with what I've put on the list, I invite you to tell me why in the comments. The reason why I think that this one is bad is the one that you're probably familiar with. It's difficult to sight read. Many people say that the glow indicators are enough to tell what's coming next, and on playing the level again, I can say that this also works for me. However, I'm a firm believer that gameplay should be judged by how it feels to a person who's at or near its skill level. And when I was at Geometrical Dominator's skill level, it just wasn't feasible for me to look ahead when I was already struggling to react to what had appeared in front of me. This is a more difficult feat for beginners than many experienced players let on, which I think is why people have had such a hard time getting past this section. Up next is the pinnacle of annoying early gameplay, Cycles. To be more specific, this part of the beginning. Both Cycles and Time Machine get flack for their excessive use of triple spikes, but all of the latter stays off of this list because it doesn't have any one part where the triples are back to back to back to back to back. Instead, they're sprinkled throughout the level and only one or two at a time. Cycles, on the other hand, outdoes Time Machine, a stage with a much higher total, an annoyance by putting 5 of them in just 10 seconds. Even though triple spikes in main levels are slightly nerfed, putting this many of them in a level does not make for an enjoyable experience. Keeping with early levels, number 7 is the midsection of Can't Let Go, which ranges from the fade to black through the ship part. Compared to the beginning, which features many tight spike gaps, and the upside down cube, which is pretty intense for an early official level, this awkward middle doesn't offer much in the way of challenge. The simple platforming is a disappointing beat drop, and neither it nor the flying live up to what comes before and after. Having such a long section that's easier than the rest of the level doesn't make for engaging gameplay. Some people like this kind of balancing, I just don't get it. Like Can't Let Go, Electrodynamics also has a difficulty break which is really boring. It comes at the end of the first half, succeeding gameplay which itself isn't that hard, and cranks the level all the way down to 3 stars before you head into the actual hard part, these 3 ship sections. Defenders of Electrodynamics say that this is a good thing, because playing through an easy part builds tension for what's coming ahead, but in my opinion, a difficulty break can only succeed in this pursuit if the player has earned a break by having already made it through something comparatively tricky to the ending. But the first half of Electrodynamics is almost entirely easy, so this part fails to produce any suspense and instead feels like a chore every time I have to sit through it. I plan to elaborate on my thoughts on difficulty breaks in an entire video dedicated to difficulty balancing. If you're watching this far into the future, I've put a card here linking to that video. If not, you can subscribe to my channel to be notified when it comes out. Another reason why I don't like this part is the deco. It's very empty and copy-pasted in comparison to the rest of the level. For these reasons, I've decided to place it at number 6. Rounding out the top 5 is this UFO and ship part in Electroman Adventures, a level mostly made up of good gameplay and creative decoration. This segment, on the other hand, is not. The UFO is basically just a Flappy Bird level, and the ship is this same structure repeated and mirrored throughout the part. These parts are 2 of the laziest in all main levels. Up next is a pair of almost identical flying sections in Polargeist and Dryout. Both of them are about as uninspired as you get, being composed only of squares haphazardly placed around. The one in Dryout is at number 4, while Polargeist's ship earns a spot on the podium because the squares in the former take more effort to build than default blocks. Earning the silver medal of bad main level parts is ToE2's final ship part. I understand that it's supposed to be pretty hard to lead players into the final hurdle that is the mini-wave and UFO, but these last 2 clicks are quite an unnecessary difficulty spike. I think that if Robtop had buffed the start of it slightly and made this gap more lenient, it would have been just right. Instead, players died to these 2 inputs over and over again, which is only made worse by how deep into the demon this choke point is. And the worst part in any Robtop level is the second wave in Deadlocked. This thing was the bane of my existence when I was beating Deadlocked. Not only was there nothing in the other official levels to prepare me for such tight wave gameplay, I even went and beat custom demons, including Fractured Circles, prior to completing Deadlock, and still struggled with this one part more than all others combined. Even right before I finished the level, I was still losing more than half of my attempts to the first 20%. It was completely ridiculous to put a part like this in a main level when there hadn't been any really challenging waves before. And once again, crazy difficulty spike. Many of the worst Robtop parts aren't in the worst Robtop levels. For a ranking of every official level in GD, watch this video next. I hope you enjoyed the video, leave a like and consider subscribing if you did, and as always, thanks for watching.